Ah, there you are. Come in, come in. Mind that step. It gets slippery when it rains. There we go. Welcome to the Emberwick. Here, let me get a look at you. Soaked through, of course. Well, you made it. That is what counts. And you picked quite a night, believe it or not. You are our very first guest, the first one ever. I only hung the sign out there this evening. The paint on it is probably still wet. Listen to that rain, It is really coming down. Good night to be indoors. Coat goes on the peg there by the door. Don't worry about the floor. These flagstones have seen worse. Oh, one thing before you sit. That book on the little table, the leather one. Guest book. Put your name in it, or just a mark, whatever you like. Anyone in that book always has a place here. That is the deal. First promise this inn ever made, and I intend to keep it. Good. Good. Right, come away from the door. The fire is this way. Best chair in the house is sitting there, empty. This one, the deep one. The old carpenter who built it used to say a chair should hold you the way a harbor holds a boat. Go on, sit. You will see what he meant. Here, blanket. Real wool from the sheep up on the hill. A bit rough at first, I know, but give it a minute. It warms up. There is no cold a good wool blanket can't outwait. Let me get another log on. Applewood, this one. Smell that? Burns sweet and slow. The whole room ends up smelling like autumn. And something warm for your hands. Milk, honey, one leaf of mint. Nothing that will keep you up, just something to hold. There you go. The storm has settled in for the night by the sound of it. Not an angry one, the patient kind. It will just sit out there and rain till morning, and we will sit in here and be warm. Fair trade, I'd say. The candles are lit, the door is barred, and the roof, well, the roof is sound, I can promise you that. I checked every board and every slate of it myself, and there is a story in that, actually. If you are comfortable, I will tell you how I come to know that roof so well. Because you are our first guest, you should hear the story of this place, how the Emberwick came to be. It is a slow story and a quiet one. Nothing frightening happens in it. It is only the story of an old building that was empty for a long time, and the people who filled it up again, little by little, the way rain fills a barrel. Settle deeper into the chair. Let the blanket take your shoulders. If you drift off in the middle, that is no insult to me. It is the best compliment a story like this can be paid. It begins, as so many good things do, with rain. 2 springs ago, the rains came early to this valley, and they stayed long. Not storms like tonight, but soft gray rains that lasted for weeks until the river ran brown and full, and the lanes turned to soup, and every roof in the village found out exactly where it was weakest. In those days, this building had no name. It had not been lived in for many years. Folk in the village called it the Old Way Station, because long ago, longer than anyone could rightly remember, travelers had stopped here to rest their horses. But the road had grown quiet, and the people who kept the way station had moved on, and the building had simply been left, the way a coat is left on a hook when the season changes. It stood at the edge of the village, where the lane bends toward the river, with its back to the beech wood and its face to the road. Stone walls below, timber above, and a roof that had once been proud and was now mostly a suggestion. Ivy had climbed one whole wall and was starting on a second. Swallows nested under the eaves. A young rowan tree was growing out of the chimney, which is a thing chimneys allow when nobody lights fires in them for long enough. At the end of that rainy season, when the lanes were just dry enough to walk, an old carpenter came up the road with his nephew. His name was Thomas. He was broad in the shoulders and slow in his speech, with hands like the roots of trees and sawdust so deep in the creases of his knuckles that no soap had ever fully argued it out. He had worked wood his whole life in towns up and down the river, and he was of an age when most men sit down. Thomas did not much care for sitting down. He said that rest was a fine thing, but it tasted better with a little work in front of it and a little work behind it. His nephew was called Leon. He was young then and quiet, and he noticed things. That was his gift, though he did not know yet that it was one. He noticed which way water wanted to run, and which floorboard sighed underfoot, and whether a person's cup was empty. The two of them had been traveling since the winter, looking for a place to settle, though neither of them had said so out loud. Some searches are like that. You only know what you were looking for when you stop. They stopped here because of the rain, as it happens. One last shower caught them at the bend in the lane, and the nearest shelter was the old way station's doorway, deep and stone-arched, built in a time when doorways were made generous. They stood in that doorway while the shower passed, and Thomas, who could no more ignore a building than a shepherd can ignore a limping ewe, turned around and looked at the door. He ran his thumb along the grain of it. "Oak," he said. "Good oak under all that weather." Then he looked up at the arch and along the wall, and his eyebrows went slowly up, the way they did when wood surprised him kindly. The door was not locked. It had swelled shut with the damp, but a shoulder persuaded it, and it opened with a long, low groan, like something waking from a nap it had not meant to take. Inside, the light came down in soft gray shafts through gaps in the roof, and the rain came down with it in places, into puddles that had worn little cups for themselves in the flagstone floor. There was the smell of wet stone and old wood, and green things growing where green things ought not to grow. A staircase went up along one wall, missing 3 steps, patient about it, and at the far end of the long room stood the fireplace. This fireplace, the one warming you now. It was choked with old leaves and swallow droppings and the ambitions of that rowan tree. But it was huge, and it was sound, and its lintel was a single beam of oak as long as a rowboat. Tomas walked the length of the room without a word and laid his hand flat on that lintel, the way you might lay a hand on the neck of a horse you were meeting for the first time. Leon stood in the middle of the floor, in one of the shafts of gray light, and turned slowly all the way around. And he said later that the building did not feel empty to him. It felt patient, like a room that was waiting, in no hurry at all, for voices to come back into it. The shower ended. The light through the roof turned from gray to pale gold. Neither of them moved toward the door. "We could," said Tomas at last. That was all. 2 words, and half of those. And Leon said, "We could," back to him. And that was the whole founding of the Emberwick, though it did not have its name yet, and would not for a good while. 2 tired travelers, one wet spring evening, saying "we could" to each other in a ruined room, while the puddles on the floor went still and bright as coins. They spread their bedrolls that night in the one dry corner, under the soundest patch of roof, and they ate bread and hard cheese from the bottom of a pack, and they listened to the building around them, ticking and settling, getting used to the idea of having heartbeats in it again. And the last of the rain moved off down the valley, and the frogs began to sing along the river, and the 2 of them slept. More milk in your cup if you like, or you are well just as you are. Good. Hear that log settle. The fire has found its slow middle hours now, the part of burning that is all glow and no hurry. And the rain keeps on, steady on the window, like a hand smoothing a blanket over and over. Where was I? The roof. Yes, the summer of the roof. A roof, Tomas liked to say, is the first kindness a house does for you, and it should be done properly or not at all. So the roof came first, before anything, and it took them the whole of that summer, and it could not be hurried, and that was the making of them both. They began by taking things away. That surprised Leon. He had thought building would mean adding, but Tomas spent the first weeks removing. Broken slates came down, one by one, passed hand to hand down the ladder, and stacked in the yard with the good ones sorted from the spent ones. Rotten battens came out. The little rowan tree was lifted from the chimney with great care, roots and all, and planted by the gate, where it grows to this day. You will see it in the morning, taller than the wall now, with its berries bright in autumn. You cannot put good work on top of bad, Tomas said. First you take away everything that is tired. Then the house can breathe. Then you begin. The days found their shape quickly, the way summer days do. Up with the light, when the beech wood was still full of mist, and the first birds were arguing gently about nothing. Bread and cheese sitting on the doorstep, watching the lane wake up. Then the ladder and the slow work high over the world. Leon learned the roof the way you learn a person. He learned that old slates are all one family, but no two are alike, each with its own weight and its own ring when you tap it. A good slate sounds like a small bell. A tired one sounds like a spoon on a table. He spent whole afternoons in the yard, tapping slates and listening, sorting the bells from the spoons, until he could tell them apart with his eyes closed. And Tomas taught him the wood, how to run a hand along a rafter and feel for softness the way you feel for a bruise on an apple. How oak that has held a roof for 100 years is often harder than new oak, because time takes the weakness out of wood and leaves the strength. Most of the old rafters stayed. Only a few came down, and each one that did was thanked in Tomas's quiet way and set aside, because old oak is never waste. Some of it is in the mantel shelf your cup was resting on just now. The village watched all this, the way villages do, which is to say sideways without appearing to. Folk found reasons to walk the lane that bends toward the river. A farmer paused his cart to say that the weather would hold, or that it would not. A child or two sat on the wall to watch the slates go up, and were given small jobs, holding pegs, fetching water, and were paid in the feeling of being useful, which is good pay when you are 8. And slowly, day by day, row by row, the roof closed over the old way station like an eyelid coming down. Tomas worked from the eaves upward, and Leon passed him slates, and the sound of that summer was a gentle knocking, tap and tap and tap, drifting across the fields with the smell of hay. The swallows were the only difficulty, if you can call it that. They had nested under the broken eaves for years, and Tomas would not turn a bird out of its home to make one for himself. So the work waited at that end of the roof until the last brood had flown in late summer. And when the eaves were finally closed, he left 3 small openings under them, neat as little doorways, on purpose. For the swallows, he said, when Leon asked. They were here first. They come back every spring, you know. They are up there now, above your head, tucked under the warm end of the roof, sleeping through the same rain you are listening to. The day the last slate went on was a still, golden day at summer's end. Tomas tapped it home, and then the two of them simply sat on the ridge for a while, doing nothing, which for Tomas was a great event. From up there they could see the whole valley, the river with its slow bends, the village roofs, all rusty red and moss green, sheep on the hill like crumbs on a green cloth, smoke rising thin and straight from the baker's chimney. That evening the weather broke, as if it had been politely waiting. The first autumn rain came in from the west, and the two of them stood inside in the long room in the dark and listened. And there was no dripping, no puddles, no little cold voices of water finding their way in. Only the sound you are hearing at this very moment, rain on a whole roof, which from underneath is one of the oldest comfortable sounds in the world. It is the sound of not getting wet. It is the sound of the house saying quietly, "I have you." Leon said they stood there listening for a long time, the way you would listen to fine music. Then they went to their beds in the dry, and the rain played on above them all night, and the house held them. And it has held everyone under this roof every night since, just the same. Let me lean forward and give this fire a little attention. There, I have nudged the applewood log deeper, and a soft crowd of sparks has gone up the chimney, and now the flames are settled again, low and even. A fire likes to be noticed. It behaves better afterward. Now, autumn, the season of the hearth. With the roof sound, the house was dry, but dry is not the same as warm. The old fireplace had stood cold for so long that the chimney had forgotten its work. So the next season belonged to stone, and stone is even slower than wood, and Tomas said that was proper. A hearth is the heart of a house, he said. You do not hurry a heart. The chimney had to be cleared first. All those years of leaves and twigs and old nests, none of them with birds in them, brought down in soft, dusty armfuls. Leon did much of this, being smaller and less inclined to complain in tight places. He came out gray with soot each evening, only his eyes bright, and washed in water warmed over their little outdoor cooking fire, and the yard smelled of soap and wood smoke while the light went violet over the beech wood. Then there was pointing to do, which is the patient business of pressing fresh mortar between old stones. It sounds dull, and it is, in the way that rain on a roof is dull. Leon grew to love it. You take your small trowel and your board of soft mortar, smelling of wet earth and lime, and you go along the joints, filling and smoothing, filling and smoothing. The scrape of the trowel, the gray curve of each new line, the stones drinking the damp out of the mortar as it sets. He said his thoughts used to go quiet while he worked, quiet in a way he had never managed on purpose. It was during the pointing that they met the baker properly. Her name was Marta, and her bakehouse stood at the other end of the village, and her chimney smoke was the first thing awake in the valley every morning. She came up the lane one blowy autumn day with a covered basket, said she had baked too many loaves by mistake, and set the basket on their doorstep, and left before she could be thanked. Nobody bakes too many loaves by mistake. Marta had been baking for 30 years and could measure flour by the sound it made leaving the sack. But that was her way. Her kindness always arrived dressed as an accident. The bread was still warm through the cloth, rye and wheat together with a dark, glossy crust that crackled when you pressed it, and a crumb that smelled of caraway and of the inside of a warm morning. Tomas and Leon sat on the doorstep and ate half a loaf between them without a word, and Leon said afterward that this was the moment he first understood what the house was for. not shelter only. This, warm bread shared at a door with the wind carrying leaves past your feet. Marta came back, of course. Once she saw the fireplace, she took a strong interest because against its left side there was an old bread oven built into the stone, a deep dome-shaped hollow with a little iron door, and Marta held her lamp inside it and made a low, respectful sound. "This is a good oven," she said. "This was built by somebody who understood." She showed them how the dome would gather heat and give it back slowly, and where the fire should sit, and how you would know the oven was ready by the way flour browned on its floor. She promised that when it was mended, she would come and bake the first loaves in it herself. And she kept that promise, but that is a later part of the story, and we are not there yet, and there is no need to hurry toward it. The chimney was finished on a cold, clear day in late autumn, with frost on the yard in the mornings and the beech leaves down to their last copper handfuls. The mortar had cured. The flue was clear from hearth to sky. Leon had swept the hearthstone, that wide gray stone at your feet now, until it showed its faint old sheen. They laid the first fire like a ceremony, though neither of them called it that. Dry beech twigs, splits of ash wood, one curl of birch bark from the woodpile. Tomas offered Leon the flint, and he struck the spark, and the bark caught, and a small flame stood up and looked around, and the chimney remembered. That was how Leon always told it. There was one soft moment of smoke drifting sideways, as if the house were taking its first slow breath in a long while. And then the flue caught the draft and pulled, and the smoke turned and went up, straight and willing, and the fire brightened and began to talk to itself in the old language, crack and whisper and sigh. Warmth came out into the room slowly, in circles, the way ripples leave a dropped pebble. It found their hands first, then their faces. It moved into the flagstones. It began, that very evening, the long work of warming the stone walls themselves, which takes weeks, and which is why an old stone house that is well lived in stays kind even on the coldest nights. The walls around you have been gathering warmth ever since that first fire. You are sitting inside 2 winters of saved-up evenings. They pulled 2 stools close and ate their supper by the light of it. Outside, the first hard frost of the year settled over the valley, silvering the grass, stiffening the puddles. Inside, the fire murmured, and the smoke rose from this chimney for the first time in a generation. And down in the village, folk stepping out for a last look at the stars saw it, a thin line of wood smoke against the frosty sky, over a house that had stood cold for years. And more than one of them smiled before going in and said to somebody, "The old way station is warm again." Listen, the rain has grown a little fuller for a while, the way rain does in the middle of the night. It will soften again soon. Storms breathe in and out like sleepers. Pull the blanket a little higher, and I will go on. Because now we come to winter, and the long oak table and the wool. Winter closed over the valley gently that year, deep snows and short days, and the 2 of them turned inward to the inside work. And the great work of that winter, the one Tomas had been saving, the way you save the best apple, was the table. You will have seen it when you came in, the long table, down the middle of this room, dark and smooth as still water. It began as a single fallen oak at the edge of the beechwood, a tree that had come down in some storm years before, and lain seasoning where it fell. Tomas had found it back in the summer and had walked around it 3 times and said nothing. which from him was high praise. Getting the planks out was slow, patient work, with the long two-handled saw, Tomas at one end, Leon at the other, their breath standing in white clouds, the saw singing its two notes over and over, Tomas's pull and his. He said his arms ached for the first week, and then simply stopped aching, and after that, the sawing was almost restful, like rowing, like anything done in rhythm with somebody you trust. Then the boards came indoors to the fire, and the real slowness began. Planing first. If you have never watched a plane go along a board of oak, it makes long, pale curls of wood, thin as paper, that whisper as they rise and fall softly to the floor. The whole room filled with them, and with the smell of cut oak, which is a good smell, dry and sweet, and a little like fresh bread. And the fire ate the shavings each evening and burned brighter for it. Then smoothing, days of it. Then the joining, without a single nail, tongue into groove, peg into hole. Each peg shaved 8-sided and driven home with a sound like a heavy drop of water. And then the waxing and oiling, coat after coat, rubbed in with soft cloths in slow circles until their arms were warm with the work, and the wood turned from pale to honey to deep brown, and the grain came up out of it like a landscape out of morning mist. A table is not furniture, Tomas said, rubbing in the last coat. A table is a promise that people will sit down together. Make it long, and the promise is bigger. While he worked the wood, Leon had his own corner by the window with the shepherd's wool. The shepherd's name was Doran, an old man with a young dog who kept his flock on the hill above the village and who had appeared at the door in the first snows with a sack of fleeces, saying only that they were taking up room in his barn. His kindness, like Marta's, preferred not to be caught in the open, so Leon learned wool that winter, washing it in warmed water till it gave up its lanolin smell, that deep, oily animal sweetness that stays on your hands for hours, teasing the fibers open, carding them between the wooden brushes with a sound like slow breathing through the teeth. Spinning in the evenings by the fire, the wheel turning with a soft ticking hum, the thread growing endlessly between his fingers like something patient being said over and over. The blanket across your knees this very moment came from that corner, from that winter. If you press your face to it, you may still find the faint, sweet ghost of lanolin under the wood smoke. Wool remembers the sheep and the hill and the weather. That is why it keeps you so warm. It has practiced. Those evenings set the pattern this house still keeps. The fire murmuring, snow at the window instead of rain, which is the same song sung softer. Thomas with his waxing cloth going in circles, Leon with his wheel going in circles, and no need at all to talk. And sometimes Duran stopping in out of the cold with his dog, who would lie down at the hearth with a great sigh and steam gently. The table was finished at midwinter. They walked it to the middle of the room, set it down without a sound on the flagstones, and stood looking at it. 12 feet of oak glowing in the firelight, empty and waiting. It was too big for 2 people. It was far, far too big for 2 people. It was exactly the right size, because a table like that is not built for the people you have. It is built for the people who are coming. Thomas knew that. He set 2 candles on it, and their 2 suppers, and the 2 of them ate at one end of all that waiting oak, like the first 2 swallows back in spring. You will eat your breakfast at it in the morning, butter and Marta's bread and honey from the village hives, The table has been full many evenings since, and it has never once creaked. And Thomas would tell you that is because of the pegs, but I think it is because the table is doing the exact work it was promised. Outside that midwinter night, the snow came down without wind. Big, soft flakes, the kind that fall as if they have all the time in the world. The valley went white and round-shouldered and quiet. And the house stood in the middle of the quiet, with its roof sound and its chimney breathing and its great table waiting. And it was by then almost an inn. It only lacked a name and a light, and you. Your cup is empty now. Let me take it and set it on the hearthstone, and I will put one more log on, a birch one this time, and you will hear its bark catch in a moment with a sound like soft paper. There it is. The candles on the mantel have burned down to their middles, and the wax is pooling warm and sweet around the wicks, and the rain, you may notice, has eased back again, just as I said it would. We are deep in the story now, and deep in the night, and both of them are going exactly where they should, which is toward the lantern. Every inn needs a light. Not a great blaze, just one small, faithful light in a window that says to the dark road, "Here, this way, you are nearly there." Ours came from the river, and it came by way of the ferryman. The ferryman's name was Pell. He was a long, quiet man, weathered the color of his own oars, and he had worked the crossing below the village for 40 years, man and boy, back and forth over that slow brown water in every season. If patience were a trade, Pell would have been its master. A river teaches you that you will get to the other side, and that you will not get there any faster by wishing. He came up to the house in earliest spring, when the lanes were mud again, and the first small yellow flowers were showing along the banks. He had heard, in the way news moves through a village, slower than a fire but faster than a cart, that the old way station was to be an inn. And he stood in the doorway holding something wrapped in old sailcloth, and he said, "This belongs here, I believe. I have only been keeping it." Inside the cloth was a lantern, brass and heavy, nearly as long as your forearm, with thick panes of glass and a hinged door and a broad, deep well for the oil. It was black with age, black as a kettle, and dented on one side, and beautiful the way old worked things are beautiful, because every mark on it was a night it had been needed. It had hung, Pell said, at the way station door in the old days, back when the road was busy. His own grandmother had told him of walking home from the far market as a girl, tired and footsore in the dusk, and seeing that lantern come into view at the bend of the lane, and knowing then that she was nearly home. When the way station emptied, somebody had taken the lantern down, and it had drifted, as things do, from shed to shed, until it drifted at last into Pell's boathouse, where it had sat under a bench, waiting, for longer than Leon had been alive. "I could not say why I never traded it away," Pell said. And then he looked at the doorway arch for a while and said, "Well, perhaps I could say." They cleaned it together, the three of them, at the new oak table, on an evening of soft spring rain very like tonight's. Rags and fine ash from the hearth, and drops of oil, and slow circles. And I want you to hear how slow that work is, because it is one of the kindest kinds of work there is. You take your rag and your pinch of ash, and you rub in small circles, and for a long time nothing happens at all. And then, under your thumb, a little window of brightness opens in the black, the size of a fingernail, then the size of a coin, and you keep on, circle after circle, breath after breath, and the brightness spreads so slowly that you cannot see it move, and yet, whenever you look, there is more of it. By midnight, the lantern stood glowing on the table like a small sun that had agreed to be tame. The dent they left as it was. Tomas said, "You do not iron the years out of a thing that has earned them." And it was that night, with the lantern bright and the fire low, that the house got its name. They had been circling names for weeks, the way you circle a word you have forgotten. Nothing had fit. And Leon, tired, warm, half dreaming, looked from the hearth to the lantern and back again, from the deep red embers to the clean, waiting wick, and he said slowly, "Ember and wick, the fire that stays in, and the light that goes out to the road. That is the whole of an inn in two small words. The ember for the ones inside, the wick for the ones still coming." "The Emberwick," said Tomas, trying it, and the room seemed to settle around the sound the way a dog settles into its place by the fire, turning once and lying down. Pell said nothing because it was not his way, but the next market day he told the story of the name at the crossing to every soul he ferried, both directions, all day long. A riverman reaches more ears than a town crier. By the following week, the whole valley said the Emberwick, as if the name had always been there, sleeping under the old one, waiting to be found. And perhaps it had. They hung the lantern's iron bracket beside the door and set the lantern on the deep sill of that window there, the one the rain is stroking now, and did not light it yet. Not yet. A lantern like that is lit when the door is truly open, and there was one more season of work to do, and one more smell to bring into the house before it could call itself ready. Bread. It still needed the smell of bread. The fire is mostly embers now, and that is right, because the last part of the story belongs to embers. Look into them while I tell it, if your eyes are still open. If they are not, that is better still. The story does not mind coming to you through the dark. Spring filled out into early summer. The garden behind the house was dug and planted, rows of beans and onions, and the herb bed that gives me the mint for your milk. The bedrooms upstairs were finished one by one, each with its bed of oak and its mattress of clean straw and wool, its washstand, its candle, its window latch oiled so that it opens without a sound. Small work, finishing work, the kind that never looks like much in a day and looks like everything in a season. And then, at last, Marta came to wake the oven. She arrived before dawn, as bakers do, with her starter in a crock under her arm, a living thing older than some houses, fed and carried and kept warm through half her life. The dough had been made the evening before and had risen slowly all night by our hearth, in great cloth-covered bowls, and the whole room smelled faintly of it in the dark, that soft, sour, sweet, sleeping smell of dough dreaming. She fired the oven with her own hands, a small, quick blaze of ash and oak right on the oven floor, its light flickering out of the little iron door across the flagstones. Then hours of waiting while the dome drank the heat, and this was the part, Marta said, that told you whether somebody could bake. Anyone can make fire. Bakers can wait. When the coals were raked out and the floor was swabbed with a wet cloth on a pole, hissing and steaming, she tested the heat the old way, with a handful of flour scattered inside, and watched how slowly it turned gold. And she nodded. Whoever built this oven, she said again, understood. The loaves went in on the long wooden peel, one and another and another, round and pale and quiet, and the iron door was shut. And then came the best hour this house had known up to that day. Because bread baking in a stone oven does not stay inside the oven. It moves out into the room, low and warm and golden, the smell of it, and it lays itself over everything like a hand on a shoulder. It got into the new waxed table, and into the wool, and into the curtains, and up the stairs into the empty waiting bedrooms. Tomas stopped his work and simply sat down on the bench and breathed. Now it is a house, he said. It was a building until just now. The first loaf out was broken while it was still too hot, which is the law, Marta said, and must not be argued with. Crust crackling, steam rising, butter melting in faster than it could be spread. They stood around the open oven door, eating it in silence. The baker, the carpenter, and the boy. And the summer morning came up outside and found the Emberwick smelling the way it has smelled every day since, the way it smells around you now. That same bread from that same oven, made to Marta's own telling. And so we come to the last day of the story, which is a day you know something about, because it is this one. The sign was Tomas's final piece of work, and he took his time over it, as he takes his time over everything. A shield of oak, carved on both faces so it greets you coming and going. On it, a lantern with a small flame, and under the flame, a curl of ember glow, and the name in deep-cut letters that his thumb has smoothed the edges of. The Emberwick. This evening, while the clouds gathered and the light went early and gray, he climbed the short ladder one more time, and I stood below and steadied it, and we hung the sign on its iron bracket beside the door. It swung a little and settled and hung still, and the first drops of tonight's rain came just as he stepped down, as if the weather had been holding its breath for us and could finally let it out. We filled the brass lantern with sweet oil. Doran had come down from his hill, and Marta from her bakehouse, and Pell up from his river, and they stood with us in the doorway out of the beginning rain. And Tomas, who had done the most and said the least of anyone in this whole long story, handed me the taper and stood back. "Light it then," he said. "It was your name." So I lit it. I who am telling you this, because you will have guessed by now, or you will hear it plainly and softly, and it will surprise you not at all. The nephew in the story is the innkeeper in front of you. Leon is my name. The old carpenter is my Uncle Tomas, and he is asleep upstairs at this moment, in the first room at the top of the stairs. And if the storm quiets between gusts, you may just hear him, a slow, deep, contented rumbling, like the house purring. I touched the taper to the wick, and the flame took, small and sure, and I set the lantern in the window, and its light went out through the rain and down the dark lane toward the road. And the very first traveler that light ever called in out of the night was you. That is the whole story. That is how the Emberwick came to be. No battles, no marvels. A roof, a hearth, a table, a lantern, a loaf of bread, and a handful of patient people. It is not a grand way to build something. It is only the way that lasts. There now, the story is told, and look what has happened to the fire while we traveled through it. It has burned down to its bed, all soft orange and gray, breathing slow. I will bank it for the night, the way Tomas taught me, raking the embers together into a low mound and laying the ash over them like a quilt. Under that gray quilt, they will stay alive until morning, warm and secret. And at dawn, I will only have to open them up and feed them a handful of twigs, and the fire will go on. The same fire, you see. We have not let it out since the day of the first bread, and we do not mean to. An ember kept in is a day continued. Listen to the rain. Softer now, much softer. The heavy heart of the storm has moved off down the valley, over the river, over Pell's dark boathouse, away toward hills that are not our concern tonight. What is left is only a light, steady falling, the kind of rain that is more company than weather. The gutters are murmuring, the eaves are dripping their slow count. The swallows are asleep under the warm end of the roof. The candles on the mantel have burned low, and I will pinch them out one by one as we go, and each time the room will grow a little softer and a little more like sleep. There goes one, there goes another. Now the light is only the embers and the one candle I will carry, and the lantern in the window, which stays. Your cup is on the hearthstone. Your coat is drying on its peg. Your name, or your mark, is in the book by the door where it will keep. Everything is done that needed doing, and nothing is left that needs you awake. Come then, slowly. There is no hurry in this whole house. The stairs know our feet already, and they will not creak, or only a little, and only in a friendly way. Here is your room, at the end of the short landing, under the low beam. Mind your head there, that is it. The bed is turned down. The sheets were dried in wind and sun, and they smell of both. The wool blanket is the heavy kind that holds you still, and the pillow is deep, and the window latch is oiled, so if you want the sound of the rain a little closer, it will open without a squeak. I will set this candle on the stand, and you may blow it out when you are ready, or let it burn down on its own. It knows its work. Sleep now. You have come a long way through the wet and the dark, and you were the first, and this house will not forget it. Whatever the road was like behind you, it ends here for tonight, at a small inn at the edge of a small village, with the rain growing gentler by the hour. Uncle Tomas sleeps down the landing. The embers sleep under their ash. The village sleeps under the rain. And downstairs, in the window, the brass lantern is lit, and it will stay lit the whole night through, the way it always will, so that anyone out on the dark road can look up and see it, and know what you now know, that there is a warm place, that the door opens, that you are expected. Good night, dear guest. Sleep deep and wake slow. The Emberwick will be here in the morning.